Have you ever wondered what it would take to build a mind so unshakable, so powerful, so deeply rooted in resilience that it doesn't just command attention, it intimidates? Not through arrogance, not through aggression, but through sheer presence. A kind of quiet force that makes others rethink their own limitations, that makes them pause when speaking to you, because they sense something deeper, something unwavering. Building a mind so strong it scares people isn't about domination, it's about transformation. And the journey starts in the shadows where most refuse to look. Most people live in reaction. They wake up reacting to alarms, to messages, to obligations, to expectations. Their thoughts are shaped by the noise around them, the news, social media, other people's opinions. But to build a formidable mind, you must become the architect of your thoughts. That begins with silence. The kind of silence where the world fades and only your inner voice remains. In that silence, you start to separate what is truly yours from what was placed there by someone else. Your beliefs, your fears, your motivations. You begin to unlearn the lies that have shaped your identity. The ones that told you you're not enough, that you should stay small, that you must fit in to be safe. Strength of mind is born in solitude. Not loneliness, but solitude. That sacred space where growth happens. It's in solitude that you confront your own chaos. You face the truths you've been avoiding, the pain you've buried under distractions. You learn to sit with discomfort, to let it burn away the layers of illusion until what remains is raw and real. That process isn't pretty. It's not Instagram-worthy. It's gut-wrenching. But it's necessary. Because the mind that emerges on the other side of that fire is untouchable. Discipline becomes your best friend. Not the kind of discipline that punishes, but the kind that liberates. You wake up and train not because you have to, but because you refuse to be weak. You read not to impress others, but to sharpen your intellect like a blade. You write, reflect, meditate, not for trends, but because you know your mind is a weapon and you're sharpening it every day. You make sacrifices, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you know what's on the other side of temporary discomfort. You become obsessed, not with results, but with evolution. People start to notice. They sense something different. Maybe they can't put it into words, but they feel it. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight. You listen more, not to respond, but to understand. You stop trying to prove yourself because you've already proven everything to the only person that matters, yourself. That kind of confidence is rare, and it terrifies people who rely on external validation. It disrupts the status quo. It forces them to confront their own insecurities, and sometimes they won't like you for it. But that doesn't matter, because you're no longer living for their approval. You're living for truth. A powerful mind doesn't chase pleasure. It doesn't crumble under pressure. It doesn't flee from fear. It moves toward fear. It seeks discomfort. It hunts challenges. Because a strong mind knows that adversity is a gift, that every failure is feedback, that pain is a teacher. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me? You stop blaming others and start taking responsibility for everything in your life. Not because it's your fault, but because it's your power. Ownership is terrifying, but it's also the most liberating thing you can experience. You stop needing motivation because discipline has taken its place. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the fire. You train when you're tired. You study when you're uninspired. You keep moving forward when no one is watching. Because you no longer need applause to validate your path. You become your own source of accountability. And when setbacks come, you don't flinch. You don't collapse. You adapt. You pivot. You learn. You see obstacles not as dead ends, but as detours to something better. That resilience builds layer by layer until you're not just mentally strong, you're unbreakable. You learn the art of stillness and chaos. When others panic, you stay calm. When others complain, you observe. When the world spins out of control, you stand grounded. Because you have trained your mind to respond instead of react. You've rewired your nervous system to find clarity in confusion. You've made peace with uncertainty. And that unnerves people who thrive on drama and distraction. Your peace becomes your power. And that peace is earned, not bought, not given, but earned through the daily discipline of self-mastery. To build a mind so strong it scares people, you must become ruthless with your environment. That means cutting out toxicity. Not just people, but habits, content, conversations. You protect your energy like a sacred flame. You stop explaining your boundaries. You start enforcing them. You stop begging people to understand you. You let them misunderstand because their comprehension is not your responsibility. You don't argue, you don't chase, you don't prove. You simply move. You focus on building, creating, evolving. You start loving discomfort. You welcome failure. You learn to detach from outcomes because the process becomes your obsession. You fall in love with the work, with the repetition, with the boredom, because you know that greatness isn't built in bursts of inspiration, but in consistent, deliberate, often invisible efforts, day after day, week after week, year after year. That kind of consistency isn't normal. It scares people who live in cycles of instant gratification. It exposes the gap between potential and reality. You begin to think long-term in a world obsessed with shortcuts. You plant seeds without expecting to eat the fruit tomorrow. You delay gratification not because you're a martyr, but because you understand the compound effect. You know that small actions repeated consistently build massive momentum over time. And while others quit after the first setback, you keep going. Not because it's easy, but because you are committed. Your word means something, especially to yourself. That integrity is rare, and it makes people question their own excuses. You learn emotional control. You don't suppress emotions. You study them. You observe them like a scientist, curious and detached. You learn what triggers you and why. You stop blaming the world for how you feel. You develop tools to self-regulate. Breathwork, cold exposure, journaling, silence. You create a toolbox of mental resilience, and you use it daily. Not when things are easy, but especially when they're hard. That ability to feel deeply without being ruled by emotion, that's power. That's what makes people stop and think, how do they do it? You stop comparing. Comparison is the thief of authenticity. You measure your growth against who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. You understand that everyone is walking their own path, fighting their own battles, and that allows you to lead with empathy without losing your edge. You become both warrior and monk, fierce and compassionate, grounded and driven, humble and unshakable. You master the paradoxes that confuse others because you've integrated both light and shadow. You no longer run from your darkness, you've made peace with it. And that terrifies people who are still hiding from theirs. You realize that the mind is not something to be controlled once and forgotten. It's a garden. And if you don't tend to it daily, the weeds return. You prune, you water, you nourish, you remove what no longer serves. And in that process, your thoughts become intentional. Your emotions become data, not dictators. Your actions become aligned with your values. That congruence builds trust with yourself. And others feel it. They don't always understand it, but they respect it. The strong mind isn't loud. It doesn't boast. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it, quietly, authentically, unapologetically, because it has nothing to prove. It has already won the hardest battle, the one within. And when you win that battle, nothing external can shake you. Not criticism, not rejection, not loss, because you've built your foundation on truth, on discipline, on inner peace. To build a mind so strong it scares people, you must be willing to go where most won't, to do what most avoid, to feel what most numb, to live with a level of honesty that is rare and raw. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it is worth it. Because on the other side of that journey is a version of you that doesn't just survive life, you command it, you lead it, you shape it. Not from fear, not from ego, but from mastery.